Jacksonville in Florida was, it's just so hot and flat down there, all concrete. We were doing, we would come and do albums up here, and there's nice seasons. You got some hills and nice homes up on the hills and that kind of thing. So I used to take the rental car and drive around and get lost, and just on a day off or something. I thought, man, I am moving here. I said, Jacksonville's, like I said, heat. It'd be like 85 degrees on Christmas Day. You get all dressed up to go somewhere, and it's like you're in a sauna outside.
I mean, it's all relative, but it is funny to move to Atlanta to get away from the heat.
Well, yeah, that's. I didn't want to go too far, but it was, it's a hub for Delta too. That's obviously killing me to come and have to make connecting flights all the time. So all the other guys, they still live down in Florida, Fort Myers and New Smyrna Beach, St. Augustine, and Orlando. And so every time we fly in from out west or something, I get off the plane, I get to go home. They're having to wait at the airport to connect flights.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me every time I'm out there in Atlanta how Georgia is. It's obviously a gorgeous state, and even like right around the city, it's a beautiful area.
It is. I feel like I'm magnified here. I don't know what's the...
No, you look fine. Yeah, don't worry about it. You look good.
Yeah. Okay. I'll push it back a little further. I guess that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I think my head is small, as the same size as yours.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah, I mean, how, if at all, important at this point in your career, or I guess even in the past, 30 or 40 years, has geographical proximity been?
Yeah, like I said, I was, having to come back this way, but we do 100 cities a year. We're all over the country. I'm used to it. We just came from South and North Dakota out there. I thought the winter was over with. How is it up there? Is it pretty cool still, or?
Today is beautiful. It's getting into the 70s, but it was snowing 2 days ago. So yeah, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I had done some outside. I was outside for I played golf down here, and then it was, a lot of pollen and allergies and that thing, and then have to go sing. I did 4 shows in a row out west. You got 27 degrees, all the heater air, bus heat, and all that, and man, it was a struggle to get through those shows.
Obviously, I podcast. I was out in Boston a couple of weeks ago, and we were doing kind of some marathon podcasts. I think we did about 11 episodes in 4 days, and I was starting to lose my voice. I don't know how people manage to do it professionally, 100 days a year for as long as you have. I mean, you got to have some secrets.
Well, taking care of that little pipe with the 2 strands in there, that's been a lifelong thing, taking care of the voice, I deal with it all the time, but, at least I sing correctly. I learned that back in chorus in high school, so sing from the diaphragm. A lot of these guys that sing, they sing from the face. They push everything out from the face, and you're just going to burn yourself out doing that, So a lot of them can't sing these days.
Yeah, no, I've heard a lot of stories about singers who, like a decade or 2 into their careers, start taking singing lessons in order to learn how to sing properly, so they didn't blow out their voice. But it sounds like you had that right from the beginning.
Yeah, I learned, like I said, my dad was a music director in church, so that started from all those years ago. But yeah, it's always an ongoing thing to do. I had a bus driver tell me there's this stuff called Entertainer's Secret, and it's a little spray. And when you breathe in, you spray it and you breathe in at the same time. So it gets that right on the vocal cords, moisturize it. And so he used to be a DJ. He was driving a bus, and he said, "You ever try this Entertainer's?" I said, "Oh man, that's all gimmick stuff, it's scam, And he goes, "No, actually, you'd be surprised. It's not a miracle, but it does, bring your voice back a little bit, And speaking of voice, and get mine straight here. But yeah, and I tried it, and so I drink the throat coat tea, little steam, get it in there, and then spray that. And so your voice gets traumatized of a 5-minute song, and then you get back there and sip a little sip and a little spray, and another 5 minutes you can last, So I get through the whole night like that.
I suspect at a certain point too, I was listening to some sort of recent performances, and obviously you don't. It doesn't strike me that it's your goal to make the song sound as close to a studio recording from 40 years ago as possible. That you do have to sort of start singing them a little bit differently as you go on.
Yeah, because you'll wear yourself. You have to sing again. But a lot of studio effects, doubles and things. A lot of people double their voices in studio, so you get a little wider sound. And I got my sound man. He has of course, electronically you can double it a little bit, so it kind of thickens it some. But uh, other than that, it's the whole experience. People they love to take that ride on the time machine, unfold that history, and all those songs are part of their past too, just like ours.
Yeah, a lot of it too. A lot of it comes down to this is again not quite the same as being on tour. 100 days a year, but a lot of it really just comes down to taking care of yourself, which is seems
Yeah,
obvious in hindsight, but is maybe not at the time. When you're younger, maybe not the coolest, like most rock thing to do,
yeah,
but.
yeah. You don't think about that when you're young, but yeah, as the time goes on, you back off on any. Well, first of all, we never were really big party guys or anything. We were, a light beer every now and then, ride down the road, but that's pretty much it. A glass of wine or something, but we knew first of all, we'd seen all the decadence from Leonard Skinner being around those guys, and they were like, man, turning up Jack Daniels like it was iced tea or something. We thought, man, if we ever get anywhere, we're not going to do that to ourselves. Want to be around to enjoy it, enjoy the success. And so they're all gone now. All Skinner guys are, all that hard living, and you can't do it forever.
Yeah, I mean, hard living, and then obviously just some, tragedy and
Yeah.
a lot of assorted things over time. But yeah, I mean, did you feel that, given that connection, did you feel that people had certain expectations, or they thought they were getting something a little bit different, when you rolled into town?
Yeah, it's funny because we'll joke backstage because fans, they always want to get backstage. It's like, well, what are you going to do? Watch them load trucks? I mean, they think it's going to be wild parties, and we're back there. We've got a little music area going and playing some, good songs, and just it used to be totally silent, and you're just sitting staring at each other like you're in a funeral home or something. So we try to liven it up back there because we're going to go be rocking this crowd. So we blast a lot of stuff, up tempo blues stuff, Ronnie Earl and the Broadcasters, and people that most people don't know who they are, but we like that kind of thing. It's an uplifting thing.
It used to be silent back there.
Well, because you didn't have any way to play, files on or whatever. So we bought this little Bose milk jug looking thing, and it's loud, and it's punchy, and got a bass response and everything. So we've got it cranked up back there. So uh, this one driver, we was taking us to the show. Everybody's silent, looking at their phones and that kind of thing. He goes, "Well, you guys are really quiet. It's a sold out crowd over there. It's like, well, it's not time yet. When it's time, you're on 10. So you go do it.
When is it time? When do you cross that threshold?
Oh, when the lights go down, man, you can be 22 years old again. You crank a guitar up to 10 and be a young guy and go out there and unfold that history, all those hit songs, and make it move that crowd, take them for a ride. That's the whole thing. A lot of live bands, they don't realize that you have to take them for a ride. These people went through a lot of trouble to get there, and tickets and everything. And so we just bang up these hit songs and bang them up against another one and another one. And, and people can't believe all the singles that we had out, the movie songs. It's everything you want to hear through the history of the band. We put together some little mini medleys of things. If we played all of our songs full length, we'd be there 4 hours. So in 95 minutes, we do a quick little 3-song medley, maybe talk a little bit, but pretty much just all music all the way. Take them for a ride.
I'm guessing it can't be, it can't be, excitement every single night. I mean, was there ever a point you feel like in your career when maybe you were taking it maybe a little bit for granted?
Take it for granted.
Yeah, or maybe even just that it wasn't quite as easy to sort of hit that level
Oh,
of excitement.
Well, you're gonna pass through all kind of feelings, and sometimes it's Saturday night and you don't feel like going and doing it, but it's the adrenaline thing. Once you get the crowd and all, it snaps you into it, so it's not like, you dread it or anything, but it's sometimes you just don't feel like doing it. We've had, times where there'd be a run-in with a promoter and he's, pushing us and it's like, well, sometimes you don't really wanna go out there and sing, for especially some guys that's got, an attitude. Yeah, they treat us right, we were gonna go celebrate this thing. Yeah.
Reading up on the early history, it's this funny thing when, when they're talking about, like, Donnie specifically, that it's like, this was his last chance, This was his last chance to make it big, and, I heard you sort of describing too, through the first few records, that it also sounded like you were getting to that point as well. I mean, was there a sense early on in the band that, like, that this is the time now that we gotta do it, that we really gotta make this thing work?
Oh, yeah. We had, 2 albums that went straight over the cliff, so people think that Hold On Loosely was on our first album. That was our 4th album. We had 2 albums, and, we had taken advice from Ronnie Van Zant from Skinner back then. He said, "Stop trying to be a clone of everything that's happened already. You're just copying people. You're copying things." He said, "Try to find what your influences are and all that." And, so we did 2 albums with Donnie singing. Donnie's my partner. I've known him since 14. He's still my partner. He, co-owns the trademark with me. And, but he's the one that said, we wanted to shake up the formula after it wasn't working. Donnie said, "Why don't you try to sing a couple of songs?" And I was like, "Man, I never really wanted to be the singer. I wanted to be the guitar player. It's how you start off with kids. You're kind of too shy to be a lead singer. I sang harmony and everything." And I said, "Man, I'd give it a shot." So that was Rockin' Into the Night, the first song I sang, and he didn't feel it was kind of a chant. You're rocking into. And he said, "I just don't really feel that chant kind of thing. You think you could do it?" I said, "I'll do whatever." The record company, we weren't winning. And I said, Whatever, if they think that they can do something with that, and we'll run with it. So, and then it turns out, he had more of a kind of a earthy, bluesy voice and I had more of a radio friendly commercial voice. So it's still, he never was envious or anything. He's always always supportive, always said, as long as we win as a team, doesn't matter who carries the ball. So.
Yeah, I mean, that must have been a little bit terrifying the first time getting out there, and, I mean, that is such a singing in front of an audience is really one of the most vulnerable things you can do, especially the first couple of times.
Well, it wasn't my first time. I'd played in
Sure.
all these other bands, cover bands and things. Jacksonville, Florida was a Navy town, had 4 naval bases there. So all of us, from Dwayne Allman, Greg Allman, Ronnie Van Zant, everybody played sailors clubs at 16 years old. We played all the hits of the day and the sailors. It's kind of like Liverpool of the South. Liverpool was just like that port town, a lot of ships in docked and sailors on leave. And so there's a lot of clubs, a lot of opportunities to play. So we were all young guys up there underage playing cover songs, and the sailors would be on leave, and they'd be drinking and fighting and everything while while we're up there unfolding the radio songs and everything. So I've said before, I said, then you do that for a couple of years, it's like $100 a week, 16 years old. It's pretty good money. And, we do that for a couple of years, and you learn the structures of songwriting. We didn't realize you were absorbing the payoff and where the pattern of the craft of songwriting, because all these radios are Young Rascals, Santana, all the Three Dog Night, everything. And you start seeing how the pattern goes of the pre-choruses and the bridge and the outros and everything that goes into it. And the big payoff, the chorus, is the lifting up out of the song. And so you get a little cocky after a couple of years. You think, well, I can write my own songs now. And that's when you go starve for the next 10 years. Not something I recommend.
In a few ways, I suspect that that's a really good proving ground because, it's one, they don't have to pay attention to you, and they probably aren't in a lot of cases because they're there doing their own thing. They're not there to see you necessarily, and it probably, I mean, you really have to be a showman and really put yourself out there to really
Yeah.
win over a crowd in that situation.
Yeah, I remember the Woodstock movie came out, and we were doing Who songs and all that, Joe Cocker, and I was modifying my voice to sound like Joe Cocker, all that stuff to try
That's a
to
great way to lose your voice, right?
yeah, I know. "What would you do?"
At that point, I mean, was it music was, just it was a hobby, or was it something that you were really sort of seriously pursuing?
It was at first, it was a hobby, yeah, like
Yeah.
everybody, and, we were closely associated with the Skinner guys. They were a teen club band. They played teen clubs and dances and everybody around that area because of the opportunity for sailors clubs and everything, there was a lot of teen clubs and that kind of thing. So, it kind of it separated you from just the common person. You were in the band, we had the matching uniforms, that whole thing. So, it kind of made you a little special. So you felt pretty good socially at 16 years old. You could, kind of feel like you're a little special for the night, and, that's one of those things that after a while when you start seeing that it's actually possible. The Allman Brothers were starting to get taking off. They had a little bit of success there, and then of course Leonard Skinner used to be called 1%. That was their early name, and they changed the name, and they got the door open a little bit for them. And you start seeing it could be possible. Maybe I could get a little piece of this pie, So I'm talented enough. I think I can, go the distance. Well, again, you go through so much suffering and failure. That's what I tell these young guys. You got to be able to accept all that failure first and still believe in yourself, which is really hard to do. And a band is kind of like a support group. You've got guys who you lift each other up. You keep them, confidence up because one guy will say, "Man, I just got to get a day job. I got to get, I got to make some money and all that." And you're like, "Oh man, we got a couple of steps down the road here. Look, we got this far. Let's see this thing through." So it is kind of a support group. But there were times, man, I remember specifically South Carolina. We had this broken down old agent that booked us in South Carolina, and the next week was in Kansas, Chinook, Kansas. So we had just broken down van traveling across the country. Back in those days, you stayed a week at a club. You were the club band, yeah. And I remember we had this old van with a dirty mattress in the back to sleep on, and I remember waking up in the middle of Kansas, with sand stuck to my neck, and I looked out the window, and there's nothing but cornfields out there, and you really start questioning your choices in life. What am I doing with myself, And so it gets a pretty daunting experience, but so there are times where it's not that fun, but it's the time on stage. You can be 22 years old again, even today. You go out there and crank up a guitar and crowds roaring. It's fun. That's the fun part. Traveling beats you up.
Were there points early on where you got close, where it was just like, yeah, this just isn't it? I mean, we gave it a shot, and this might not be the thing.
Well, we're going to see it through. It was one of those. We were even when we were opening shows, we were playing with other groups that they were giving 110%, and they didn't actually make it. It's
Mm.
and we're pretty fortunate to have been able to go the distance. 50 years later, we do 100 cities a year, still every year. But there was this band Point Blank from Texas, and they were excellent players and talented singers and all. And we looked up to them, but it just didn't ever work out for them.
That to me is sort of, one of those things where that can be a source of, that can be one of those things where you start questioning yourself, is when you see people who are like immensely talented, and you realize that obviously, hard work and talent are a huge part of it, but like there is a little bit of luck that does end up factoring into it at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, timing was never on our side ever. We were always a day
Yeah.
late and a dollar short, but one time in our career, timing was what hit just right, and that was the MTV, first day of MTV. We had, Hold On Lucy was the 13th video, the first day of MTV, and so that put us out there around the world, all over the place, We you didn't realize this. MTV didn't have any content. It was just a unknown cable channel, and so they didn't have much content to run 24 hours a day. So they would send out their own camera crew, like 3 camera crew. And my manager said, "There's this cable channel called MTV. They want to come to Denver and film you guys play." And he said, "Okay with that?" I'm like, "Cable channel? Oh, sure. I don't know. What are you sure if they want to, you know?" And so they came out, and I remember the guy asked me to. He held up a placard and he wanted me to read the promo spot. You're watching MTV. You never hear music the same way again. And I thought it was an odd little slogan that we were going with. I guess in hindsight, I should have bought stock in it back then. No one ever thought it became a $70 billion industry. And it just closed its doors just recently. It actually for the final time, and we have become personal friends with Alan Hunter and Mark Goodman, the VJs. They were on MTV, and they come out to our shows. And I texted him. I said, "Today's the day they close." I said, "You should be really proud. Everything you brought to the society, the fashions, the music from all over the world, and you were right there at the helm." And they're very proud of it. So it's great.
That song really, I think it hit really well too because it was. I mean, you've cited the Cars, right, as a big
Yeah, it
influence on
was,
that.
that we had been trying to copy and emulate the Southern rock bands, and it was waning at the time. It was the end
Yeah.
of the '70s. So the '70s were Southern rock, and every record company wanted a Southern rock band and everything. Kind of like Seattle, they all wanted a grunge band. And so they were all courting us and shopping around for their Southern rock band. And we realized to be able to survive into the '80s, we got to change everything because so we stripped it all away, and we started looking at new wave. Remember new wave came out, yeah. And so all that was like My Sharona, everything was 8 notes, tick, 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 and with melody over it. And we call it melody and muscle. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We stripped it all down and put a good track together, arrangement, and I just felt like that's arena rock. We tried to get it. We were big fans of Boston and Foreigner and Bad Company, big influence of Bad Company and Paul Rogers and all. So yeah, we wanted to have success. The bottom line is, you want to make this thing last. And some of the die-hard fans from a long time ago say, "Oh yeah, that's when they got commercial and all that. They should have stayed with that original style." Well, you would have never heard of us again if we'd have done that. So it was a conscious decision.
I mean, it's just very refreshing to hear you say that because a lot of times people will deny that,
Yeah.
and will suggest that they weren't chasing that. So, I appreciate obviously like, great songs, and you were able to continue to write great songs in that genre. But it is refreshing to hear somebody say, like, "Listen, like we wanted to make a life, we wanted to make a career of it, so
That's
like
right.
we tried to write a hit song."
Yeah, you only have one chance. You're young once, and you don't want to look back and go, "No, we stuck with that, and we never did anything, never sold any records." Like I said, the first 2 albums were failures. So you got to change something. So that's what Donnie suggested that I sing something. So I said, I'll try to do anything to lift us up, make our life, improve our life a little bit here. Yeah.
Once you do find that formula, is it, "Hey, let's stick with this for a while," or is it, "Hey, we need to keep experimenting and trying new
Well,
things"?
you're also learning the songwriting craft. You're learning as you go, so you can, I can look back and listen how green we were, as like everybody can, and I co-write with Jim Peterick from the band Survivor. He was a big influence on us. We rock into the night. He had written, and there was a demo. It was a real crappy demo, but the record company said felt like they could do something. Well, we had already had 2 albums that weren't working, so we're like, "We'll do anything anything you think you can do." So we put that out, and it opened doors at radio. And then you're only as good as your last single, so you have to keep backing it up with something a little better, something that radio will play, because there's only 24 hours in the day, and most of that's commercials on terrestrial radio. So you have to. It's really hard task to get on a program list, and so we made sure that kept your standards high. You can certainly the B material, you're trying to get the A material. You don't want the B. You can write songs all day long, and some of them you have to be painfully honest with each other that it's finished. Yeah, that song's finished, but it's kind of a B song. It's not bad, but we're looking for the A stuff, the choruses that radio likes, and that kind of thing. So we were always looking for that. I was a big fan of all the '60s stuff, all the Searchers and the Lovin' Spoonful and everybody back then, Beatles, everything. I mean, you could if people ask me my influence, like, the song Anytime at All, Beatles, and then the Night Before Beatles song. Those two, to me, that's really what I'm doing every time is just getting that spirit, keeping that lively spirit of it. They got a little esoteric after a while. They mellowed out. I kept thinking, what happened to all the rock stuff with the Beatles? I loved all that stuff.
I hear people who are around for it, especially people who are in bands, describe the Beatles like it was the moon landing. Sing the Beatles on TV like it was that much of a like just a complete cultural shift. Was it that big of a moment for you?
Oh yeah, that Beatlemania, man! It was like they were aliens came down to Earth.
Yeah.
Everybody was just overwhelmed with it. But they were such brilliant songwriters. I mean, Hard Day's Night, all those songs back then, and they judged them too harshly. John Lennon said, "I came up with this song, but I don't really like it, but it's called Hard Day's Night." And I say, well, you look back, it's a classic, all those songs. But that's the standards. They kept their standards high, and McCartney, right in there. But so, and, you just, I've said before that back when we had day jobs, you had to set your radio clock in the morning to wake up. And there would be some song that just fell out of the sky and it was like brilliant. You're like, how did they do that? How did all those parts fit and perfectly and play through? I want to learn to do that. I want to learn to make songs that are memorable that people will, sing along to and have that quality to them. So it takes a long time to develop that. I told the guys in Kansas, we've been touring with them. I said, man, that Carry On My Wayward Son that came out there one morning. I was like, man, who did that? How did that come? That was brilliant. So all those songs did that. So like I said, they seemed like it fell out of the sky. So, we tried to come up with things, good quality like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure people have said that about your songs too, and that the answer is, if I knew the answer to that question, there'd be a lot more of those, right?
Yeah. And then people don't realize, most people think that a group goes into a studio and they just play it one time and they sing it and they leave and they're out of there. They don't realize that you crafted that song and you've edited it, you've arranged it, done all that, and then you put a basic track down and you overdub and then you put in vocals and harmonies and then you mix it and master it and all that. So yeah, by the time that radio clock goes off, it's finished. So it sounds brilliant, but there's a lot of work behind it, just like making movies. My wife's always saying, because I'm a little bit interested in, all the formation of movies and dolly tracks and just editing and all that. And I'll say, can you believe they were acting while that dolly was spinning right in front of them? She's like, I don't want to know about the science of it.
You're taking me out of the movie
right.
when
So
you're talking about it.
Yeah, it's the science behind it all.
It sounds too like a big part for you maybe was bringing in some outside collaborators. I mean, that really helped you hone that craft.
It did. When we when Rockin' Tonight came out, my manager said, well, you want to write with that guy that wrote that song? He's right outside of Chicago. I said, sure. So Jeff Carlisi and myself got on a plane, and the first day we didn't know him. Jim Peterick is his name, and he's been a lifelong friend. I just finished the Milestone album with him. We did it together. But we got there to his house first day, and there's a kitchen table, and on the coffee table was a big 2-foot wide bulbous car, like just a big ceramic car. I said, "What's with the big car on the coffee table?" He goes, "Oh, that's my vehicle. I'm your vehicle. Ides of March." I'm like, "Oh, that was you?" Yeah, so yeah, he wrote that song, sang it, played guitar solo, all that, and so that was 1970. He had a number one song at 17 years old. I said, "Dude, I was putting bulk oil in a Ford Fairlane at 17 years old." And here, so I went to school on him. I was like, "Okay, this guy knows he's a pro. He can do it all." So he taught me so much about everything. But anyway, the first day we sat at his kitchen table and he said, "So how you guys been doing?" I said, "Man, I did know that songwriters have little notebooks and things of lines and titles, and you keep the pages open while you're playing a chord pattern. You look at a little line as something from the lexicon. Can't keep a good man down, anything like that. You sing along with it, and it might be a good line or a title." And so I said, I'd gone through a relationship was going south. It was soured, and I said, "What is it about people that just can't seem to tolerate their differences? They try to change each other, or keep them under the thumb." And I was with a woman who I was trying to be somebody, and she didn't. She was envious and all that. And I said, and I had my notebook open. I said, "What do you think about this song? This title, 'Hold On Loosely'?" And he said, "Oh yeah, but don't let go." And that was the first thing. And perfect antenna. He had his antenna out, so he made the perfect bookend, a couplet that said it all in 2 lines, and that's what it is. It's like a short story. You tell a little short story. So we were off to the races. We wrote it about an hour and a half, and it was an anthemic song. It's been one of the top. We save it for the end, like the cherry on top in the shows, So, but it said so much about relationships, and people have come up and said, that song, man, it just meant so much to our marriage, and and I said, really, because we were just trying to get on the radio. We weren't. It wasn't a personal advice.
This wasn't about you, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Is there any correlation between the amount of time that it takes to write it and how good or how succinct or I guess how popular? I mean, and a lot of times I will hear that it is those ones that come really quickly that tend to be the ones that do capture people.
Yeah, you kind of lightning in a bottle sometimes. Sometimes it takes a long time to rewrite, and I remember "Hold On Loosely." We had pretty much finished it, and Jim came down to Jacksonville where we lived, and he said, "This song needs a bridge." He said, "I've got a good idea." He said, the song, the Doobie Brothers song, "What a Fool Believes," bum 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 bum. The keyboard thing. Well,
I
that's
was
the
going to
bridge. And
ask,
hold on,
Sentimental Fool.
ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. The doobie bounce, they call
Yeah,
it.
so he borrowed it, like they say, amateurs steal, professionals borrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Was
Yeah.
was that is that how Sentimental Fool made it into the song too, or is that
Sentimental Fool, was that in that lyric? Doobie Brothers lyric? Might have been.
yeah, well, what a fool believes, yeah.
What a fool. Oh, yeah, I didn't think about the fool part. Yeah. Yeah, so he just said, "Fool, that's true. You just came up. You just enlightened me on it, right?"
I was
Yeah,
wondering
fool, the
that.
word
That's
fool. So,
very
yeah.
funny, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
don't let it slip away, sentimental fool. Yeah, right.
how do you get from, not wanting to be the guy out front to, really not that many years later, 1987, to all of a sudden, like, I'm the solo guy?
We had pushed so hard. This is a competitive business. I mean, I don't recommend it to anybody. And you have to be 5 steps ahead of yourself all the time. You got your songs written, arranged, ready to go. You've got contractual obligations, and that machinations of the record business will wear you down. So I had done it, all those years, and I was just burned, and there was nobody at home waiting for me behind the door. I was a personal life had suffered, and just everything for pushing. And so I just wanted to back off and take a break. And A&M said, "Well, we want to offer you a solo album deal. You want to, because you had a little string of hit songs. If you want to, you could pick anybody in the world you want to play with. It will foot the bill. So I had a friend of mine, Brian Foraker. He had worked with Keith Olsen out there. We did Strength in Numbers album, and Brian was producer as well. And he was friends with Jeff Porcaro and Mike Porcaro. I said, "Oh man, yeah, those guys are like the engine room of anything. They played on everybody." So it was a real honor. I also had Denny Carmassi from the band Hard. He played drums in some songs, and Dan Huff, who's a titan in the industry now. He was a session guitar player, but a great guitarist, and he played all those great Chicago songs. He was the soloist in a lot of people's albums. But they all came anyway. I was honored to have those guys, and they were so nice, and we just cranked all these big rock songs out in the studio. And I'd written with Martin Briley, who's an English guy, and he brought that kind of British influence to it. Uh, but it was everything was finished. It was fixed, mastered, and mixed, and all. And the record company got sold. A&M Records sold Polygram for $1 billion, and everybody who had a project that year, it was on the shelf. And when everybody left the company, they brought new staff in. Janet Jackson lost her project. There was, A&M artists. And so we tried to buy the master tapes and all that. They weren't interested in that. It's all about acquisitions with these companies, holdings, I guess they release it posthumously or something, but they didn't want to sell the masters anyway. So 28 years later, it was an import through Australia. A guy called Brian McNeese from Melodic Rock Records said, we got to get this album out. Some of these songs have leaked online and they're really, substandard mixes and things, And so he put together a package, nice cover, pictures and all that, photos. And turns out we got 5 stars all around the world, UK and Japan, and so they were sitting on something that shows they don't know what they have. It was pretty golden, So it was called Ride the Storm solo album. So, but in the meantime, 4.5 years later, I was called to ask me to come back and at that time it was like I needed them just as much as they needed me. So we were just picked up right where we left off.
I had read an interview that you'd done. It more contemporary, but I think before the actual release of the soul record, and it sounded like at a certain point that you had thought that maybe it was just gone to time. That the masters had just sort of like.
Oh
vanished.
yeah, that was. Yeah, he had called me, said, "Kid, do you have a 2-track mix of that album?" I said, "I do have it somewhere, but I had moved about 3 times, so." And I remember the 2-track box, it was the mixes, had red, a Sharpie ink on it. I remember it had red, had the song titles and times and everything. And I found it, and my son had taken it and he had a reel-to-reel, and he had been playing it. And it was in a bin, like just plastic Tupperware bin in the basement. I pulled out I'm looking everywhere, and at the bottom of this bin, there's the red lettering, the red ink from all that time ago. And I said, that's the only copy existing in the world.
Yeah.
Is this because everything else is gone. You probably remember Universal Music, the music they had bought A&M, bought Polygram, or consolidated, but they had a big fire out there. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
so all the vaults, all the classic masters and everything was burned up. So I was holding the only copy. So we had it, we remastered it, and put it all together. Sounds great, big, large sound to it. So it was good that we found it. So
that must have been a moment.
Yeah, to find that in the bottom of a bin under a bunch of junk.
It's the only one. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, my son had put it down, and after we had moved, it was stored in a storage bin there. So yeah, he'd put it down there. So it's funny to discover it after all this time. Yeah, it was one of those things. There it is. That's the only copy in existence.
In spite of the gap, and obviously, the band kind of trying to, at least at a certain point, continue on without you, that you were able to hit the ground running and pick up where you left off?
Oh, yeah, that was my mics was there, my place on stage.
Yeah.
We just picked up, and it wasn't any really ill will with those guys. It's just things just kind of fall apart after so many years. You're just pushing so hard,
Yeah.
So they had Max Carl come in, a great singer, great guy. I've met him several times. I told him, I appreciate you keeping the name of the band current and profile up. And he sings with Grand Funk Railroad.
Oh, Grand Funk Railroad.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and does a great job. Great voice. Yeah, nice guy.
How much of that release of the solo record? I mean, how much was that a contributing factor to the decision to finally put out another 38 special for the first time in about 20 years?
Oh, you mean the Milestone?
Yeah.
Well, uh, after so long, people they tend to relegate you to back to the '80s or something. So we had
Yeah.
been touring all this
Classic
time.
rock band, right? Yeah.
Yeah, heritage band, whatever. But a lot of bands, they reform, and you can see they're doing it for the money. We've been going 100 cities a year ever since then, all that time. So it wasn't like anybody was beating the door down from new 38 Special record after all this time. So I wanted to present an updated, 2026 version of 38 Special, and it's kind of like you're kinda damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you put something out that sounds like '80s, it sounds like '84 or whatever, the fans are gonna shrug their shoulders and go, "Well, it's nothing special, sounds just like they did back then." And then conversely, you take some risks, you get outside of yourself and try to write some things that show, some growth through the years. Then you got the hardcore fans back there scratching their head going, "Huh? This is 38 Special?" So you just have to kinda just dismiss all that and do what you want to do and be an artist and explore different avenues. Co-wrote a song with Randy Bachman, the Guess Who, and then had Pat Monahan from Train come in and sing a song for you. He and Joe Bonamassa had done a version of "Hold On Loosely" for YouTube, and it got like 1 million hits on it or something. But during the recording of the album, I thought, I'm going to reach out to his manager, see if Pat would like to come sing a duet with me. His manager came back, said he would absolutely love to do it. He's been a lifelong fan. So, he came in and just crushed it, and brought all that soulful stuff and all the ad libs and everything. And so I made a new friend there. I told him, I said, between the two of us, we could probably scare up a pretty good song if you want to do some writing. He said, absolutely. So we got another opportunity there to open up.
Over the years, I mean, you're talking a little bit about, that moment of, leaving for the solo record, and it sounds like, maybe there's like a little bit of burnout, or certainly,
Yeah.
what we would call work-life balance was totally out of whack. But I suspect at this point in your life, you've gotten a little bit better at balancing the two.
Yeah. Yeah. You learn to prioritize your life. Back then it
Yeah.
was the band was just always sacrificed everything for the band, and then your family life suffered, your personal life. So you realize, no, that's you out there being, that's work. So you keep your family life, keep your everybody happy, your wife happy, everything. So, and my she comes out with me sometimes, and we have a good time. So, but we've got brand new stage set, everything. The album's doing great. I'm learning all this streaming business because I'm old school, so the radio used to be king, and now it's not. It's like they take their cues from streaming and clicks and views and all that kind of thing. But the first song, All I Haven't Said, is doing great. I mean, it's like 4 million plays on Spotify. The YouTube video is a 500,000 or whatever, somewhere around there, and 1,000 people a day. It's still it's viral, but you got to wait a long time. It's My manager said streaming has a long tail, and he said you have to wait. It's not like you put an album out and the next week you get program ads and you follow it and it gets on the charts and do all. Nothing works like that anymore. It's all uploaded. It's out there for everybody to you're giving your music away. Put it on YouTube, the whole entire album, Spotify, all that. And people, if it's greatness, they're looking for greatness, because there's so much, product out there. You got to have something that's great. And that song, the first song, All I Haven't Said, there's something magical about that song because it keeps people, or they're referring it to their friends, they're sending links and all that. And so, 1,000 people a day, and then the platforms, streaming platforms are really doing great. But there was a girl recently that she had a number one song. Her name escapes me now, but she had a number one song. She had put that album out a year and a half ago, and it just now gets to number one. Because what radio does is they start looking at the Spotify top 50, and they see all the plays, the clicks on it, and they see something's generating, something's happening there. Then they put it on terrestrial radio, and you'll hear it in the cars and things. So it's backwards. It's completely backwards to me, but I'm still learning.
How do you feel about the fact that you have to know all this stuff?
Yeah, it's a big educational process. Times are different now, but, he's very well his whole team, they're very aware and adept and, learning about all that. And so I asked them questions and, like, "Teach me how this works."
But it sounds like you are interested and you do kinda wanna know the machinations of how things do work.
Yeah, you have to be interested. If it's
Yeah.
your art out there, you want to see how does it work, because to me, it was like, well, I went through. We had to do it in phases, or on the touring 100 cities. So we'd go in and do 4 basic tracks, go back out and do 15 cities, come back to the studio, do 3 basic tracks. So it was like, building it in about 9 or 10 different phases, and then I would go to Chicago and off time and do the overdubs and vocals and everything. And I mean, literally, I had a driver in a car waiting in the driveway while I'm putting the final harmonies because I have to go back on tour. So all that's going on. And so, you're just, you do all that and all that effort. It took over a period of 3 months or so, and then it comes a release date and it's like, okay, here it is, and then, all the push, all the publicity, promotion, everything. And then where did it go? It's like, what happened but it's out there. It's all done. Everything was done right. But that's how everybody releases albums. They put it out to streaming and have to wait a long time.
It's even worse than that because it's you record it and then you wait a really long time and then you
Yeah,
do promotion and then you wait.
yeah. Yeah, you have to do a lot of promotion, interviews, and all that, and you keep the profile up. That was the basic. It was the 50th anniversary. I wanted to have a brand new set. We have towers and moving lights. Great, beautiful set, and I also wanted to know all new music for 50th anniversary. And people. It has awakened them. They're like, well, I always like 38 Special. Where are they still around? That kind of thing. So you have to kind of shout your name in the streets again after all these years. But it's been met really positively. Everything's been going good.
Does that mean it's not gonna necessarily be another 20 years for the next one?
No, no. If everything works out here, we've already got a few other songs that weren't on the album, so little bits and pieces, and so we worked out the new songs for the stage set and all that. It goes across real well. The funny thing about All I Haven't Said, the one it's a throwback to my influences, the Searchers and Beatles, and the harmony groups of the '60s and all. But I was just happened to be sitting at the dining room table, had an acoustic guitar, strumming some chords, major seventh chords, and my wife, she's got a musical head. She was in the corporate world, but she did have a cover band back in the '90s. But she came around and she said, "Is that something you're working on?" I said, "Nah, just noodling around." She walked around the corner and said, "That sounds like that should be called All I Haven't Said." I was like, "What? Say that again?" So it was a great title. So we sat down and wrote most of it, put the story together and about how couples, it's all relationship oriented studies of how people can get complacent in a relationship and maybe the guy is, he's doesn't talk a lot. He doesn't know how to express himself. And the woman feels like maybe she's not being heard. And so all that came out in that story that, it, I could quote all the poets across the ages and still not find the words caught inside my head. I would write them across the sky how much I loved you and all I haven't said. And it just means, and it touches people because they experience that too. Truth in songs can't be denied if it's truthful.
And you saved quite a bit on couples therapy, it sounds like.
A lot, hold on loose. There's a little bit of couples, viewing. Yeah, it's a study in that kind of thing. I was always most fortunate with that, using that as a relationship angles, perspectives.